The hiring of Connie Carberg, that set the image.
There were virtually no women in the sport at all in the 1970s.
Knocked down for a minute.
She had more obstacles than most based upon her sex.
Back up now a minute. Don't miss this chance.
She's just such a historical figure.
My life, I've been waiting for this moment.
She was an early pioneer, and the Jets were early pioneers in giving her that opportunity.
And that opened doors for myself and for others that are currently in the league.
One time for the glory, writing my own story. Nothing gonna stop me.
Did you think that you could become a scout when you were younger?
Not until I met you, Connie.
Well, I was born in Babylon, Long Island, which is on the south shore of Long Island, about probably an hour outside of New York City. And with my mom and dad, and I had two brothers, one older and one younger. I was a tomboy from the time that I was young. I don't think I ever played with a doll. I was, not a girly girl at all. And doing all sports, but not knowing much about football.
Connie was my older cousin. We were first cousins, and my father, Dr. James Nicholas, was a well-known orthopedist at the time. He had operated on President Kennedy. And in 1960, Harry Wismer, the owner of the Jets, asked him to be the team doctor.
At that time, there was just Uncle Jimmy, Dr. James Nicholas. So he then asked my father, who was an internist, for anything that was non-bone and families he would take care of. My father decided to have the office connected to the house so that he could be home more and around us all. I was 13 years old when my father and my uncle became the two team doctors for the New York Jets, who were then the New York Titans. I figured I better start learning about it. And that changed my life.
1965 comes around. The Titans had changed their name to the Jets, and the Jets draft Joe Namath.
Well, I feel confident I can play better than anybody that's ever played the position.
Joining the Jets was, of course, a turning point of my life. I wanted to play football, and because of the ownership of the Jets, that really won me over.
Namath dropping back to pass. Namath looking for the end zone, throwing, touchdown to Maynard.
Joe was more than football. He also had charisma, had a flair, and everything about him. So that changed the whole game. Namath would come over, and just all the different players, when they would get examined, and they would come up for coffee and cake with my mother. It was just a great way to grow up.
Connie was nice as can be, enthusiastic, polite, genuine as can be.
The Jets, and knowing them all and just being around them, that just gave me my identity. So it just gave me confidence, and the more that I met them and the more that I wanted to learn and read about it. Coach Walt Michaels was so great, teaching me things, never looking down his nose.
Connie could name every player, everybody on the team, where they went to college, what their stats were for the last 3 years, and she was just encyclopedic. And as a little kid, you think, come on, she's a girl, how much could you know about football? But she was unbelievably knowledgeable.
There were two different leagues whenever I started playing professional football. There was American Football League and there was the National Football League. The incentive was for the American Football League to prove themselves equal or better than the National Football League. The third championship game comes up, and then we're in it.
The city of Miami, host for this Super Bowl game.
It took a long time coming, 4 years.
Namath has not been bashful this week. He said, I guarantee a Jet victory.
Joe's guarantee of Super Bowl III. He's still the legend for that. I got to go as a high school senior with my whole family to be a part of that. I can still feel it. I can still feel it. We were the underdogs, 18 points to the Colts.
The Colts had only one loss that season, and they were just a wonderful football team with a great coach, Don Shula.
We had a fight against Johnny Unitas to win that game and to beat Don Shula.
The third interception for New York.
Good touchdown, no penalty.
We may be sitting in one of sports' greatest upsets in history. The New York Jets are the world champions.
We beat the NFL for the first time in a championship game. It proved that the AFL can play, and then the leagues merged.
A lot of people say now you have to see it to be it. When I was growing up in the 60s, as far as people actually being a coach, a scout, a sideline reporter, there were no women that I knew of. I went to The Ohio State University. I made my big decision to go over to the Union, which is where the team would eat. I had a book called You Win with People. It was by Coach Woody Hayes. And so I went over and I waited for the team to come out. When he came out, I asked him to sign it. So he signed it, we talked for a while, and he said, boy, you really know your football and you love sports. Right now, there's really nothing for women. He said, I don't want you to give up on your passion. Why don't you come to every practice? And I did. I spent all my time doing that, sitting in the stands, watching the practice. Then if there were scouts there, talking to them. If I had a chance to talk to the players or coaches, asking them questions, trying to learn even more about the sport. He was just like an amazing mentor to me. And that really changed my world.
You're talking about at Ohio State, a football power with Woody Hayes. She's someone that has a lot of courage to get into really an all-man's world at that time. And it was all driven by that passion for the sport.
Women, obviously back then, were pigeonholed into certain roles. The women's movement came out. They began to make some inroads into certain classic male roads, but football was a different story. That was a much different male-dominated sphere.
There were no women that I knew of. And until the 70s, when we started with Title IX,
that we here shall be able to finish that unfinished business of our equality.
Phyllis George came in and played a role as a sportscaster, and then you had Leslie Visser being able to report from the locker room. Those were people who were spearheading the penetration of women's involvement in football. And Connie, in the administrative and business side, she was penetrating in that way.
I graduated in 1974, and then my father had his 50th birthday party in June of that year. And the head coach of the New York Jets was there, Charlie Winter. He said, I can see your knowledge and your passion. Would you consider working for us? And I said, are you kidding me? That's the dream of my lifetime.
When she became a secretary with the Jets, it didn't surprise me that she got the position. It surprised me that they would give her the position because she was a woman. Back then, that was frowned upon.
And I was the only woman there for the first 2 months. The part was I didn't know how to type. You can teach skills, but you can't teach attitude. That's really what they want. I was totally a Jet through and through. Al Ward, who was the general manager, and Mike Holovac, who became the director of player personnel, said, Connie, we want you to start doing some scouting for us. I said, great. That was it. Oh, look at this. It says Wesley Walker, wide receiver, Holovac. That was my boss, Mike Holovac. Has everything to make it big. This is like a treasure. Oh, this is probably the greatest thing I've ever seen. It was out of the blue, and it was very exciting. And yet, as I said, I felt very comfortable in football. I thought, this is great. This is what I've wanted to do.
Her personality, her passion, and her love for the game just won people over to the point where she was actually hired into professional football as the first female scout.
They started having me write reports, sent me out to Ohio State, sent me to Boston College, sent me to the Orange Bowl, a bunch of places locally. It was reel to reel, so I would watch whatever school I was going to watch and then write up reports on the players from there, and then later on interview players.
She had a good eye for football talent, and I don't think it surprised anybody. I didn't look at this as abnormal. Connie was a part of that family.
76 and 77, you had no pre-draft physicals. You had no computers. You had no combine. And Mike Holovac hit on so many people that formed the team that went to the AFC Championship in the 80s. That's when we got Richard Todd and Marvin Powell and Wesley Walker and Joe Klecko, Abdul Salam, Schaefer Suggs, Greg Buttle. Those two drafts were just, oh, he was amazing. And then he left. He got a great job with the Houston Oilers, but they became the Tennessee Titans. Mike Holovac was unbelievable, and those years were amazing. So that's when they brought in a young guy, Mike Hickey, who was completely different. He was just a lot tougher, did not know me at all. He became my new boss in 1978. He wasn't easy to work for in the beginning. He would say, you know, you don't need to go out to practice. I said, no, I really need to. I said, this is where I watch and I can see the kind of players that the Jets are drafting and the kind of scheme that they have. I just stood up and it worked out. It took a lot for me because that was against my nature to stand up. Mr. Hess, who was a great, great guy, but you have to remember he was really much older. They said, we really don't want a female flying all over doing that. I was disappointed. But you have to put yourself back to the 70s. It's different. If you said it to somebody now, very different than back then. So it's really hard to compare it. At that time, I could just fold up and say, no, then forget it, I quit. But I decided I love the Jets too much. I love what I'm doing here. If I'm still going to be able to grade films, I'm still going to be able to interview players, and who knows what else down the road. And so I said, I'm just sticking it out.
But then you get that opportunity to put your name on something. And it was that 1979 Senior Bowl when the Jets were coaching the game and they had an injury and needed an additional defensive end.
Mike Hickey was on the road. He was scouting. Walt Michaels was the head coach. And that's when I proceeded to go through Big Green books, the binders, whatever tapes and films, reel to reel, whatever we had. And I narrowed it down with my phone call to 5 guys. One person said, I'm ready to play. Football's my life. That's what I want. I can get on the next plane. And it happened to be this guy from the small school, East Central, Oklahoma, who ran a 4.55 at 6'5", 270. And that was Mark Gastineau. I went into Walt Michaels, whom I said, I would like to suggest that we take Mark Gastineau as a replacement for Mike Stensrud. And he said, let's go, Connie, let's go with it. And the rest is history.
Mark Gastineau getting to the quarterback.
It's amazing what he can do.
And the crowd now reacting to Gastineau.
How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great.
I'm just looking at your Ring of Honor. All right, look at the Ring of Honor. There it is. There it is. It's been a long friendship, long time.
Oh, my God. Connie picking a little guy out of Oklahoma and just knowing that she had everything to do with what I put together with the New York Jets.
Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate it.
I love you.
Love you. I love you too. Mark Gastineau got drafted in 1979 in April. He played in 79 and 80 while I was there, and then I left in 81. My husband got a real good job offer down in Florida. We had to make the decision. But to leave the Jets was really something hard to do.
The hiring of Connie Carberg, that set the image. I had the opportunity to see a woman in a position such as an NFL scout. And that opened doors for myself and for others that are currently in the league.
For her to still be actively engaged with the Jets and here at the Hula Bowl and connected to the sport all these years later, it's an amazing journey for her.
How many guys are you interviewing?
I had a little light load, so I'll probably end up with 5 total.
Did you think that you could become a scout when you were younger?
Not until I met you, Connie. If I wasn't in that academic building that day, I wouldn't have met you.
Connie, to me, she's just such a historical figure, especially with the way the league has progressed and changed and become more open to women in particular.
I just can't thank you enough for all the advice and the passion. After talking to you, hearing how much you loved it, there was no doubt in my mind this was the direction I was going to go in, and I was going to do whatever it took.
As I said, it only takes one person to believe in you, and I did right away. You went to the Women's Forum, and then from there, you got with the Buffalo Bills with an internship, and then now on to the Minnesota Vikings.
Today at like these practices, you'll see a handful of young ladies that are out here scouting, wearing NFL gear, and all they have to do is just look no further than 1 field away and they see the original.
I'm glad that I really stumbled into that day. Like, there were so many things that had to go right for me to meet you, and I can't imagine what my life would look like if I hadn't. I know I wouldn't be right here right now.
I get to watch you. It's like 50 years later after me being with the Jets, and to see your career just keep blossoming and watching everything that you do, as long as I stay healthy.
And the crowd now reacting to Gastineau.
Namath looking for the end zone, throwing, touchdown.
Connie is one of the highlights of my life, let me put it that way. I've always been proud of her. How proud are we as a country now to be giving the ladies equal footing here, which it should be. She was an early pioneer, and the Jets were early pioneers in giving her that opportunity, and it's worked out beautifully, and we are a better country today.
It's hard not to cry. Jets mean everything to me. They mean everything. Always have. From that time and the way they've treated me in my whole life. I love my Jets dearly. They mean everything to me. They are my life.